Hi, my name is Paige Heiser. I will be doing my presentation on climate change and the effects around the world. So, for my presentation, I will touch base on what climate change is, what are the most severe issues in the result of climate change, and typical issues that affect each continent around the world. So, what is climate change? While climate change can be defined in many different ways, the definition of climate change is a change in global or regional climate patterns, in particular a change apparent from the mid to late 20th century onwards and attributed largely to the increased levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide produced by the use of fossil fuels. Some of the most severe issues and the results of climate change include increased heat, drought and insect outbreaks, increased wildfires, declining water supplies, reduced agricultural yields, health impacts in cities, and flooding and erosion in coastal areas. Climate change has many other severe issues, but there are many chain reactions that can occur from climate change. For example, when heat increases, it causes wildfires, which can cause loss of lives, loss of land habitat, loss of homes, and many other issues. The biggest effects of climate change in North and South America include wildfires and flooding. In the western United States, wildfires have become increasingly more common, which results in the loss of ecosystem integrity, property loss, and increased mortality and temperature trends. Each year we see disruptions to transportation, communications, power services, and water systems. Since 2000, an annual average of 70,600 wildfires have burned an annual average of 7 million acres. With the United States being a global superpower, they can have a big influence on other countries if they take the step to help combat climate change. The United States could be a huge influencer in resolving climate change. However, in 2020, they were the largest oil and gas producer in the world. A large issue with the United States not being able to take this step to lead is the fact that climate change is politicized and is not recognized by many Republicans. In order to resolve climate change-caused issues, such as the growing occurrence of wildfires and natural disasters resulting in flooding, countries need to focus on the core level of issues, such as carbon emissions, and recognize the ability to use newly found technology to replace items that result in releasing toxic material into the air. The United States' biggest focus should be on reducing GHG emissions, and they're not focusing on that enough. The worst climate change effects in Europe include excessive rain, flooding of river basins and coasts, increased sea levels, and coastal erosion. Europe, apart from other countries, is already taking the lead at resolving climate emissions that result in the issues previously mentioned above. Europe has set binding emission targets for key sectors of the economy to substantially reduce greenhouse gases. Factories and power plants are granted permits for how much carbon they can emit. Europe is looking into requiring all airlines to buy carbon permits to combat emissions from their flights. Many countries such as the United States, China, Japan, and many other countries could take these steps to help reduce emission rates and assist the ease of releasing toxic materials into the air. Stress on water resources and reduced crop productivity and spreading of diseases are two of the most affecting climate change problems in Africa. The problem with Africa is the capacity for adaptation to climate change is low because Africa hardly has resources in the first place. Despite Africa being a third world country and struggling to access electricity for a majority of its population, they are still taking the initiative to set a renewable energy target of 30% by 2030. This goal will deliver energy for its population and combat climate change simultaneously. More countries should be working on their internal issues like Europe and Africa. One of Asia's biggest issues is the increasing average temperature and increasing precipitation events. This can cause the damage of infrastructure and disrupt China's role in global supply chains. Countries such as China and India are the largest producer of coal and the #1 emitter of greenhouse gases. They are the second largest consumer of energy. Countries such as China have voiced their interest in combating climate change. However, they have not taken the same emission tax or emission permits as seen in Australia and Europe. The worst effect of climate change in Australia is the damage to coral reefs and the rise of temperatures and acidification. So, what can Australia do to help combat climate change, or what are they already doing? Well, Australia is already combating emissions of toxic material and has been since 2011. In 2011, Australia approved of a carbon trading plan which ensures that Australia's 500 worst polluters would pay a tax on every ton of carbon they emit. Well, Australia is an example of the chain reaction that can happen in climate change because coral reefs can protect coastlines from storms and erosion, and they provide jobs for many local communities. They also are a very important ecosystem for life underwater. So when coral reefs get damaged, many important ecosystems can die, causing a disruption in the food chain and a loss of a lot of people's jobs, and many people rely on these coral reefs to live. The worst side effect of climate change in Antarctica is the damage to ecosystems and melting of the polar ice caps. So what can we do? What can Antarctica do to help with climate change? Well, most of the issues in the Arctic are caused by human activities in surrounding countries because there's not much of a population in Antarctica. To help combat these issues, countries need to work together to reduce their carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions. Another example of a snowball effect here, because when ice water melts, the sea levels can rise, which can lead to flooding, a lot of habitat destruction, and many other problems. But one of the biggest problems is the loss of habitat for many Arctic animals, including the polar bears. We need to act now on climate change, because some scientists are already warning that changes to the world are becoming irreversible. While countries are fighting climate change with their own solutions based on their own internal issues, like I expressed in the past slides when I talked about the different things continents could be doing to help fight climate change, there is only one solution. The solution to helping end climate change would be to completely remove the CO2 emissions instead of just reaching their national quotas set in the Paris Agreement, which 195 countries are a part of currently, and they are working to reach their national quotas, but the only way to end climate change would be to somehow remove CO2 emissions completely. It is important that countries keep fighting to try to end climate change.